Hello YouTube, this is Stephen with On My Way to FIRE, personal finance channel about early retirement and all things investing. And in today's video, I want to talk about investment myths I no longer believe in. All right, so there's a ton of these, but I'm going to narrow it down to just a few just to get started here. And if this goes well, I want to do another part 2, maybe even a part 3 on this topic. So let's get to it. All right, so with investing, wow, there's so much to learn. And the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And this was definitely true for me in my journey. I originally started as just a trader looking for an opportunity to just make quick money on day trades. This is back in 2006 to 2007. I made a little bit of money doing that, but it wasn't really a long-term investing strategy. So originally when I heard about investing, a friend of mine told me about mutual funds that he had somewhere around 2000 and 2001. And it probably was just before the dot-com crash of all that just poor performance of the market and sell-off with tech at that time. And this guy was telling me that his mutual funds were making 25 to 30% a year. And I just could not believe it. I didn't think it was possible. You know, banks at that time were paying an interest rate of about maybe 5 or 6% on a CD. And savings rate was maybe about 3%. And I just had no concept that it was even possible to make that kind of money in the market. And then he's telling me about dividends on top of the gains, and I just didn't understand any of it. And I was like, mutual fund, what's that? And so he explained it to me a little bit and says you have to put your money in with the broker and they'll trade it for you. So I'm like, okay, so it's basically like you have a stockbroker person, but that was before the no commission trades and all that stuff was popular, thanks to Robinhood, and now the bigger firms are doing that where you can buy your own shares. And it was probably a loaded mutual fund, now that I know. And that means that you pay a fee up front as like a commission, and then they do their trading inside of that fund, and then there's a management fee on top of that. But at that time, I had no concept of any of this. So I'm just thinking, okay, wait, so you give them like a couple $100 and they invest it for you. So I'm like, all right, so you gotta be rich then by now. But he's like, no, I gotta pay the taxes though. I'm like, okay. So still, it wasn't really registering. So I guess the biggest barrier to entry, if you want to call it that, would just be aware of what kind of firms are out there and what services they offer. So if you want to do your own trading, you can use, Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard. You can open up accounts with them and you'll pay the least amount of fees with those type of companies. This is all information I realize now. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he used American Funds, one of those type of companies. And when I think of Edward Jones and mutual funds and American funds, they tend to be more expensive. Their business model in the past was more about those loaded funds where you pay a fee, and they could be as high as 5% to get into a mutual fund. And so if you put in $1,000, you're only putting in $950. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. That's how loaded funds work. So you have less of your money going to work for you from the beginning. But if you're making 30% a year, then I guess it doesn't matter. And it was really just like a foreign concept. I was barely, I was in college, barely making any money, working a crappy warehouse job, just paying bills and having extra money for CDs and go to some concerts once in a while. But I didn't really have any extra money to put into the market. I just generally put it in savings account and occasionally do a certificate of deposit CD. And when I was younger, in junior high and high school, I was getting somewhere around 7% on those CDs. So I thought that was pretty cool. But then I noticed the interest rates would change. And so with investing, it just seemed so foreign to me at the time that I had no concept of any of these things. All right, so let's go to number 2 here. And I would say, what do you expect from the market? We all expect to make money and grow our funds, but how you grow it and what kind of income is achieved does affect how you're taxed. Now, I thought that when you buy and sell stocks, no matter what, you have to pay the government fees for your taxes and all that. Well, that only really applies to a taxable account where it's in a brokerage account, a non-retirement type account. And I do have that type of account now, but I just kept thinking, why do I want to hassle with all this? It's just too much work. And so currently I use TurboTax, and it has my information saved from the prior years. And so it just loads up pretty quick and you pay the $40 or whatever for the fee to file your state income tax. But I just thought it would be too much work. And now that everything's set up on portals, you can log in to your Schwab, Robinhood, Fidelity, Vanguard, whatever accounts you have, and they're electronically linked, and it will download all the information for you. So you don't have to input all the purchases and selling dates and the capital gains and dividend income and the types of dividend income. It just automatically imports. I'd say that's a huge time saver. So my reference point is from probably about 25 years ago to now, and the investing landscape is just totally different from what it used to be. So, as things progress, it gets a lot easier. And, you can use your phone, use your tablet to do your trades. Most people aren't sitting on an actual computer desk doing trades or calling a stockbroker anymore like you used to. And I think towards the end, a lot of those companies, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, eliminated the ability to even call in to do your trades. That's probably more late 90s, early 2000s that was even a thing. So I guess just times change and you have to keep up with all the changes in technology, and the ease of use is probably one of the biggest things that's even out there in addition to the barrier to entry, which is just getting an account opened, get the app on your phone, link your bank account, and then start funding it with money from your checking account. So I'd say myth number 3 that I don't believe in anymore is that the stock market's only for rich people. And that mentality really was just from my own naivete at a young age of just barely getting started in the world and not having additional income. Like I said, I just go out and do a few things with friends, and didn't really have a long-term horizon in mind. You're in your early 20s, you're really worried just about getting by and having fun for what you can do during that time. And then as you start to get into your 30s and maybe 40s, it really hits you a lot harder to think about the future. So when I think of the stock market only for rich people, it's for everybody that wants to participate. Really, the only limiting factor that I can think of is any debt that you have. So if you have high interest rate credit card debt, that's probably something you want to get out of the way as quickly as possible, because you're probably paying somewhere between 20 and 25% interest rate, and it's not doing anything good for you other than getting another statement showing that you owe more money to the credit card company. So the stock market, if approached in a consistent and disciplined manner, can make you wealthy, but it's all in how you approach it. And so, here I'm thinking I need $20,000 or $10,000 to invest at one time just to even be in the stock market. And it really just is not true at all. I opened my first Schwab account and put in $50, and then I just got started with trading that way, and investing, really, not so much trading. When I was doing E-Trade in my younger days, I was putting in like 5 or 10 grand and trying to move it back and forth within a few days and see if I could get, grind it higher on day trades. And although that did kind of work for the most part, maybe I made $500, it really just wasn't worth the stress of that type of trading. I'm not a day trader. And so I had to find my groove. And that really was just consistent, disciplined investing, depositing money on a regular basis, most likely based off paychecks at that time. And then as I got certain bills paid off, car note, that kind of thing, and I didn't have that car loan anymore, it freed up more cash. All right, and the last thing I'll leave you with here is we're just talking about interest rates for credit cards, but not all interest is bad. I reluctantly, well, let's put it this way. I had a mortgage when I purchased my home, and I was aggressively paying it down in the beginning, but I wasn't putting any money in the market for about 3.5 years after I moved in. So I decided, you know what, I think I've got this loan paid down to about $25,000. My payment is the same. They don't recast your payment on a 30-year mortgage type of amortization. It's just the component of that payment is more towards principal. So if the payment was like $700, I think it was something like that, probably close to $600 or $580 or something like that was principal, and the rest was interest. In the beginning, it's like 50-50 or even less than that, because it's mostly interest in your loan. So I decided, okay, let's refinance the house, let's take some cash out, and I'm gonna basically float myself out a few years with expenses, and I'm gonna run a shortage on my monthly expenses, and I'm gonna fund a 401k and a Roth IRA. And so now that the amount of time has passed, I paid somewhere between 4 and as high as maybe 7% interest when I had the HELOC, and the interest rate went bad on me in 2022. It's since been reduced. But originally I had an ARM adjustable rate mortgage, and it was 5%. So for the first 8 years, I did one refinance on it. I mostly had 5% or 5.25% on the refinance. And so what I did is I took cash out, and I used that to get me through the first 1.5 to 2 years while I figured out a budget that worked for me. And in that time, I was able to set up an employee stock purchase plan, retirement account at work, 401k, and a Roth IRA. And here I am now, and I still have the loan, and it's more or less the same that I started with. I think I actually, in this last refinance, I had it up to $140,000, which in Southern California really isn't that much. But I got it paid down to $115 right now, so I think I'm like at $114.6. So my payment's $700 a month, give or take, and most of it is interest, but there is a principal payment portion of that loan. But it's based on a HELOC now. I had to refinance out of the adjustable rate mortgage, and although a HELOC is also an adjustable rate mortgage, it's not fixed for that term. It really does float over the HELOC. Over the Federal Reserve interest rate. So I have this weird funky loan with a regional bank from back east. And so what they did is they said, okay, you have prime rate for the first $50,000. Anything over that, up to your limit, is 1 point below prime rate. So based off my balance, I did the math. My interest rate is somewhere around 5.8%. And so, okay, what are we doing here? What I'm doing is I'm accepting the 5.8 interest rate in order to fund the 401k at work, because that's tax shielded. It's tax protected. In the beginning, that's coming off the top of my adjusted gross income, and that reduces my taxes on a yearly basis and allows that account to grow because it hasn't been taxed yet. I'll get taxed on that 401k money when the time comes to withdraw from that account. And in retirement, my tax basis at that time should be a lot lower. So that's just some beginning talking points here about investing myths I no longer believe. If any of these ring true for you, or you have your own tips that you'd like to share, I'd love to see them in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.